foot to call. So we do not bite with the sun together now. Practice safety. Right here at SKELEC we practice safety. Our main priority. Practice safety. Better for you and for me. Practice safety. Build a safe community. Safety is a must. Right here at SKELEC. If you love your job, put safety first. Protect yourself and avoid the worst. You love your job, put safety first. Protect yourself and avoid the worst. Practice safety. Right here at SKELEC we practice safety. Our main priority. Practice safety. Better for you and for me. Practice safety. Build a safe community.
Good morning and welcome to another edition of Power Talk. My name is Patrice Harris and I am the Corporate Communications Manager at SKELEC. Power Talk is a radio program brought to you by the St. Kitts Electricity Company Limited, where we share with you all of the latest updates and happenings at SKELEC. What you would have just heard would have been the premiere of our safety jingle. Yes, SKELEC has a new safety jingle. And we have a new safety jingle because we're going to be celebrating Safety and Security Week next week in commemoration of World Day for
Health and Safety.
Okay, it's a lot of words. Yes, so World Day for Health and Safety at Work. This morning I am joined by two individuals who are no strangers to the program. They make it their duty to come here every year to speak to us about safety. I have the safety manager and the unit head for Occupational Health and Safety at Work at the Labor Department, and I will allow them to introduce themselves so that persons can be reacquainted with their faces and their voices.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Good morning. My name is Claricia Langley Stevens, and I'm the Safety and Security Manager at the St. Kitts Electricity Company.
Good morning. Thank you again, Mrs. Harris. I am Junique Eddy. I am a Labour Officer, and I'm the Unit Head for Occupational Safety and Health at the Ministry of Employment and Labour, formerly known as the Labour Department.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Eddy and Mrs. Langley Stevens, for joining us this morning. This morning, we are going to be discussing the impacts of climate change on occupational safety and health. And that is the route that this year's Safety World Day for Safety and Health at Work will be celebrated under. Now, I know instantly persons won't be able to make that connection between climate change and safety and health at work. And it's very important that we have these conversations because at SKELEC, safety is our #1 priority. Not only the priority for our employees, but also for any person that interacts with us as a company and any of our infrastructure. Climate change and sustainability is also one of our pathways, and especially within the next 2 to 3 years, we're working diligently to improve sustainability as a company. So Mrs. Langley Stevens and Mr. Eddy, we're going to start the ball off rolling by just having a conversation about the impacts that climate change has had on safety and health at work, whether it is at SKELEC or at work at all. What has been that impact?
Yes, well, one of the things that we've realized, as I would have been telling Mrs. Harris off here, was that this is such a topic that a lot of persons, as you would have alluded to, might not be so familiar with it. We've heard about it for years and years in terms of climate change, and we've also heard that in years to come, if we are not to finding ways in which we can deal with it and then help ourselves to manage it, because finding out what the issue is one thing, but dealing with it, I think that is the bigger issue of the day. All right?
Most definitely. Mr. Eddy alluded to issues with air quality and some of the other challenges. Ms. Langley Stevens, specifically from a SKELEC perspective, what are we looking at in terms of the impacts of climate change on the work environment?
Right. Thank you so much, Ms. Harris. One of the first things that we would have discovered when we got the theme for World Day of Health and Safety, we were dealing with the presence of the Saharan dust. and that is an environmental component that affects our ability to operate as a company, because we do have persons out in the field not protected by any facility or building, and they're still expected to perform. And so as a company, we had to develop strategies and policies that would be able to allow our workers to function within that environment, but of course make it as safe and comfortable as possible. For example, the introduction of wearing masks when they are out in the field. Our linemen, for sure, would have to be exposed to that. And then one of the other impacts that we find ourselves having to deal with is the change of the climate, where the temperatures are getting very hot. And so our field teams are exposed to this excess heat. Of course, because when customers call about their down lines or no light on the pole or poles falling over, they don't care what outside looks like or feel like. They don't care about the weather. They just want the job done, and we have a responsibility to get it done, of course, as safely as possible. And so we would have started discussions on when there is excessive heat on the outside, we need to adjust the times where our field teams are deployed. We can't have them out when it is peaking, and we have to make sure that we encourage hydration and to be able to wear the necessary protective gears, the hats and so forth, or the protection for their skin, so that they do not get unnecessary exposure. And these are some of the things that the Safety and Security Department are working with our technical team management to have some of these measures implemented and tested even before we go into the hot summer months. So those are some of the ways we are countering the impacts of how climate change is showing itself and affecting our ability to operate.
Now, you would have spoken about temperature change, Sahara dust, and particularly about our employees who are working out in the field.
Yes.
Because SKELEC's, I'm going to use this as a teachable moment as well. SKELEC's infrastructure is outdoor, and if there is any fault, it means that our teams, our crews have to manually go outdoor to make the necessary repairs in order for your power to be returned. We only do that when it is safe for us to do so. So yes, there might be weather and climatic conditions. We only restore power when it is safe to do so. So I want the public to have that cemented into their heads, especially as we go into the hurricane season. But even outside of the hurricane season, sometimes we experience some climatic conditions that are not common for that time of the year. So I just wanted to use that as a teachable moment. I also wanted both of you to speak to, even for persons who are working indoors, how that can impact the work environment. Because you're working indoor, the temperature, sometimes it gets too hot. We're looking at ACs. ACs also present another challenge for indoor employees that outdoor employees don't necessarily have to deal with. So let's touch on that for a bit as well.
All right, I'll just expound a bit on it. That's a very good avenue to look at, because one of it is looking from the angle that, hey, Ms. Langley Stevens touched on the outside, which we are thinking that, hey, maybe the outside is the most vulnerable, but then when you look at the opposite spectrum, where you're looking at, as you said, the ACs, it's not the best avenue in terms of dealing with climate change, because it is not natural. Right, you're in a space where you're funded by an event that gives you certain air, but then when you go out, you see and feel the difference one time.
Yes.
Okay. We've come through the COVID era somewhat, and I think that was where we discovered where masks were to be used a little bit more, right? And now we've sort of gone away from that. But then, as Ms. Langley Stevens would have alluded to again, that we might have to introduce it again, just for the fact that if we are in positions where, for example, I am not feeling 100% right now, and I am wearing a mask, and that is to protect myself as well as to foster that I don't spread whatever to anybody. So we are thinking about, okay, you're working in an environment where it's closed up, it's an office space, maybe you want 2, 3, 4 colleagues in one area. How do you combat that now? Because most institutions right now, as we get more modern, I think the AC is kind of thought about being one of the more modern appliances used for institutions. But do we look at the backup where, let's say, if we lose power? It's funny that we're speaking with SKELEC, that we're losing power, and then after you lose power, you don't have any natural AC now. Would you have the proper windows to be open so that you can provide natural air ventilation? So that would be another avenue where we're looking at. We are going to be challenging institutions to provide an ulterior, right? Provide an avenue where you can have one, but also have another just in the event that you need to, get the air changed a bit, get the environment changed a bit. So just how climate change is affecting outside, can you manage it inside? Can you then provide an avenue where, okay, workers can come today and feel a natural sense of, hey, the air is very beautiful outside, let's get that inside. Let's allow the institution to have that breath of fresh air, as we normally say. That's right. All right?
I think because of climate change and the excessive heat that we experience, sometimes it is somewhat unnatural to be in rooms without air condition. And we have that heavy reliance on air condition, and then we don't take the necessary steps all the time to ensure that there's service, that we have appropriate cleaning taking place. And so sometimes, because of that, the AC, sometimes there isn't proper sealing of the room, so air is seeking out, hot and cold air is coming in, and we start to see mold. We start to see moss on the outside of the pipe. So that even creates a whole other avenue as we start to think about occupational health and safety at work. We hear of them for so many years, and I think it has been over a decade. We've been hearing about government buildings and other private institutions' buildings being faced with mold, and not only in St. Kitts, throughout the region. And that is something that we have to consider as well as we think about climate change, because it's not like before where we could have not had ACs within our offices. So that's another consideration that I think that we need to start looking at. Now, Ms. Langley Stevens, earlier you alluded to some of the steps that SKELEC has already started to take. I would like for you to expound upon those. You have spoken about the mask and the promotion of hydration while at work. What are some of the other steps that SKELEC are taking to ensure that our employees are ultimately safe when it comes to these risks that we spoke about, respiratory issues, excessive heat, that they are safe in order to be able to get their work done?
Thank you so much. So just to be able to piggyback on what Mr. Junique said, one of the things that we have started is education, empowerment through education. And so via the Safety and Security Department, we started what we call pocket sessions, where we have these discussions to be able to introduce employees to some of the existing challenges that are out there. Knowing and understanding our environment, we do basic information sessions that deals with prevention and preventative measures. We deal with some of the ear care, the types of health care that we believe our employees need to and can benefit from. So we look at, for example, our generation plant is a loud environment. And so we encourage our workers to be able to get their ears checked and their eyes checked, because it is important to be able to understand that if your hearing has been affected, and if we can take countermeasures to do that. Then we look at, even at the administrative level where persons indoors, we have now employed a policy where annually the company has taken the responsibility of getting our air quality tested. And that is something that I am very happy about, because when we have the discussions of the presence of mold, it is important when we put ourselves ahead of what could potentially happen if mold is discovered. So when we do the air quality testing on an annual basis across the company in all of our operational spaces, it gives us the opportunity to make interventions early. Not only that, we also have these information sessions with our employees so that they know what to look for, what are some of the signs. And if you see something that looks or feel abnormal, or the air quality appears to be different, here's how you report it so that we can get on it immediately. And I'm very happy and proud of the relationship that we have fostered with not only the Labour Department but the Ministry of Health and the Bureau of Standards to be able to ensure that there is that continuous level of communication and engagement in terms of the best interests of not only our employees but our customers in our operational spaces. And those are some of the small measures that we are putting in place, and we're doing, of course, incremental steps to get us to a place where we can create what we refer to as the safest possible working environment.
One of the other things that you didn't mention, but that would have taken place within the last 2 years, we've had a lot of health checks.
Yes.
We do have the support from the Ministry of Health. They come in on a regular basis and they do the glucose testing, they do the high blood pressure tests, they do the kidney and urea tests, sometimes they do HIV tests. We ensure to foster these types of relationships with our stakeholders because our employees are our assets.
Yes.
It is important for us to ensure that they're well taken care of because they work among a lot of different hazardous environments, especially our generation team and our teams that work out in the field. So that is very, very important for us. So Mr. Eddy, from the perspective of the Ministry of Employment and Labour, are there any upcoming legal considerations or regulatory changes that are being worked on, especially as we consider the safety of employees while at work?
Right. Yes, so I think that the fact that we, as we said, we have this theme for this year, as we know, we are following best practices from the International Labour Organization, which is the head agency which deals with safety and health regarding international. So we are saying that we are in the process currently of doing some law revision. Law revision in this case means that we are revising the laws. Some of them would have been from early 90s, 1960, and sometime way back down. So we are currently looking at them. We had some sessions even earlier this week where we were looking at the laws as it pertains to safety and health. As for now, we don't have too strong laws regarding safety and health. Reason being, back then, when the law was framed, it was really looking more at maybe the sugar factory and doing all of those factories at the time. So now we are in a space where we have moved away from that. We have moved away from that era, and we are now in an era where maybe technologically based, right? So what we are doing right now is currently looking at what the best practices internationally regarding climate change, and we are seeing how we can then put that into new legislation so we can protect. So instead of SKELEC maybe having to do things on their own, which is even always applauded, we are looking at doing something generally for the whole island, right? So that everyone, every institution, every establishment can now look forward to watching what are your targets, what are your expectations, and then meeting them and seeing how you can meet them along with the Ministry of Employment and Labour and any other institution which the government sees fit to take this charge forward. As we say, we are still trying to meet these sustainable development goals, and I think in cooperation or collaboration with SKELEC and other companies, we will meet them. But we have to start now. We have to start now because, as we see, right now it's hot on the outside, but later today it might get cold. Right? So how do we deal with the hot in the morning and then cold in the night? That in itself is something that we really have to have some conversations about.
I have a question for you, Mr. Eddy, and I apologize because it is a bit left field. If I am at my place of work and there are some factors that, in my estimation, make it unsafe, I am of the opinion that it is unsafe, how do I, as an employee, go about reaching out to your department, and what type of intervention can your department provide? Especially as we're thinking about safety at work, I think that's important to utilize this platform for.
Right. That's a great question. I think one of the first things that we would always ask, because we are somewhat to be in the middle, right? We are not on a side or anything, even though we are here to protect mostly the workers, because what happened is that the workers, from the inception of the law, it was always there really to protect workers because they were always seen as the most vulnerable, right? But in a case of that, we would always suggest that you always go the next step and the next step. So for the first step, you are feeling a bit unsafe, and based on the jobs that you're doing, we would ask you to speak to your supervisor, right? And after your supervisor gets the information, he should then or she should then pass it up to his manager or her manager, right? And we would allow that process to happen for as far as it can happen without some level of intervention, right? After that, we then ask you to, just update us, let us know, hey, I spoke to my manager last week, he or she said they would work on it, but 2 weeks have gone now, and we haven't seen any changes, right? That is when now we become a little bit uncomfortable, because we are saying that this employee feels unsafe. So how can 2, 3, 4 weeks go? And there is no level of, can we then, can we adjust something that makes the person feel uncomfortable? Can we understand why it is that the person is feeling uncomfortable? And if we have seen no change regarding the time frame, we then come and have a conversation with the manager and management of the establishment to understand and to have that dialogue that, hey, your main priority is to make sure that your staff is as comfortable as possible. Because once they are comfortable, the work will be done. Even if, sometimes you're thinking about the lazy one, and even if the lazy one feels comfortable, he would work. He or she would work. His laziness or her laziness doesn't really depend on the establishment having a safe environment. But once that is taken care of, they would work. Now, what we are looking at after that now is ensuring that the laziness is cut out of the work environment. But in the end of the day, once they feel comfortable to do what they do, because you're hired to do a job. I don't think most persons are not hired to do something that they can't do, right? So after you see that, hey, I can do this and I am comfortable, I will do it, because that is where you make your bread. That is where you make your earnings, your livable wages, and so on. So what we will push for is that collaboration between employee and employer first, hoping that it can be dealt with at that level, so we don't have to come in. And as we said, that is what the law would be there for now, so that the Labour Department or the Ministry of Employment and Labour doesn't have to come and necessarily provide a boxing match. It should be more of a collaboration around the table, more than I am on this side, I am on that side, and I throw a punch and he throws back a punch. So we are trying to foster a situation where we have more round table talks rather than boxing matches. So you shouldn't be calling me, Mr. Eddy, I have a problem at the work, and then the employer can call me back 2 minutes after and say, Mr. Eddy, I have a problem as well. Let's have that conversation together first. And then both of you call me and maybe on a conference call and say, hey, how can we maneuver around this issue? How can you make me a little bit comfortable, and I kind of adjust my working schedule to allow that comfortable to stay.
Yes. Right? And thank you so much, because I think oftentimes employees are placed in situations and perhaps they don't feel as though there is anybody that can advocate on their behalf, that their issues are not being taken with enough vigor and enthusiasm for a resolution, and that is why they end up reaching on your doorstep. Sometimes the stories are a bit exaggerated, and I know the role of that ministry would really have to have some fact-finding exercises and to make the necessary recommendations. We're going to open up the phone lines in just a bit, just for anyone who wants to contribute to the conversation. Please feel free to call in. We haven't even gotten really into the depth of the conversation, but we're almost out of time, and we always ensure that there's an opportunity for the members of the public to call in, because this is method and mechanism for two-way communication with us and our consumers. So if there are any callers, if you want to contribute, now is the time to call in. Don't call when I start to do the wrap-up, please. All right. So Ms. Langley Stevens, tell us about any future projects, and especially with the involvement of the Department of the Ministry of Employment and Labour as it relates to helping us to improve, or any initiatives we have to ensure that SKELEC is one of the premier institutions as it relates to occupational safety and health at work.
All right, thank you so much. I really want to use this opportunity to thank Mr. Junique Eddy for continuously answering our call. We do have a good working relationship, and we understand the process that he would have outlined, because SKELEC would have benefited from that intervention over time since I would have been onboarded with the company. One of the other initiatives I am very proud of is the launch of the week of activities to commemorate World Day of Health and Safety. SKELEC has gone out the gate with the second annual hosting, and World Day of Health and Safety globally is celebrated on the 28th day of April every year. And so the theme was the impacts of climate change on occupational safety and health. But SKELEC has redefined that just to accommodate our own capabilities and to promote our actions. And that is our theme for this year's week of activities would be mitigating risk in the face of climate change as a company. And so some of the activities that we are putting in place is we are actually starting with this conversation, which we always allow ourselves to be engaged in.
I'm going to ask you to pause. We do have a caller. Good morning, caller. You're live.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Great. I was asking. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, good. I was asking earlier about what we all were saying. I'm trying to at least find out when it's best to say, because I have someone drawing my attention about something. But let me quickly say, these talk shows on such a platform are very educational, informative. Like this one presently now that we all are listening to, I'm speaking towards. But I am also asking the question, does the SKELEC department know that there are safety that must be provided for their linesmen when they go to work? And I heard you speak and emphasize about what you were speaking of this morning, of such an agenda of safety and people in workplaces and the environment. But there have been people more than just me as a person speak about safety on the road. IMON in particular sees it. I do a lot of observation. There are still a lot of areas in the streets on the roads are dark. That is a concern for SKELEC. And if they are dark, lighting must be provided. One, the last roundabout in Frigate Bay. I know where I'm going, so I can walk across there, and I know where to put my feet, I know where the potholes are. I can navigate by the light of the vehicle I'm driving. But there are people, and we're talking about visitors in the most developed area where the hotels are, and guest houses. Don't know where the potholes are because the area is not well lit. I spoke a few weeks ago about the road going to Coys. That too, the road is dark. The disc jockey, Mr. Lightbird, played a song this morning, and I hope you all are not doing what the song says, running away from responsibility. Bob Marley's song, Running Away. I believe you all do see and understand and hear. Most of other people who have called and spoke about these things are a concern. It's not an issue, it's a concern. Please put the lights on the road where they are needed. The roads and the streets, a lot of areas are well dark. They are not properly lit. There's somewhat indication of the asphalt on the road. Dark. They are very dark. I'm just asking you all to see what is necessary to do it that needs to be done. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Carlo.
Have a good day.
Thank you. Have a great day as well. We look forward to the members of the public assisting us with their level of vigilance. Once you call in, you help us to manage our grid. You help us to let us know where the faults are, where issues are with lighting, anything along those lines that SKELEC provides for. We are aware that we are experiencing some difficulty with our street light maintenance. We do have a backlog, and we are working diligently to be able to get a lot of these lights back up and working. The necessary maintenance that needs to be done is taking place, has been taking place, and continues to take place. Kindly note that it is never our effort to have persons in areas that are not well lit that threatens their safety or security in any way at all. That is not the effort of SKELEC. We definitely work against those, and I'm going to bring these areas to the necessary managers to see what intervention can be done as quickly as possible. So please don't grow weary in reporting to us where these difficulties are, because we understand that that is within our responsibility. You spoke about the safety of our linemen. I will say to you that within our organization, the climbers, these gentlemen that climb the poles, they adhere to very strict safety standards. And I will even go as far as to say that they are one of our departments that do so as diligently as possible because of the increased risk and threat that they are under. So much so, the last time we were on here, we were speaking to our linemen, and they said to us, Ms. Harris, safety begins with you. Yes. Safety begins with me, because they understand that any error can result in a serious hazard at work that we do not promote. Our linemen tomorrow will be traveling to Antigua to participate in a SKELEC, a regional lineman rodeo, where they climb and they're tested as to how well are they performing their skills, how well are they utilizing safety practices, how well are they geared in terms of their protective equipment, their PPEs. I'm telling you, safety, we might not get it right all the time, and we might not have gotten it right in instances before, but it's an area that we are working diligently to improve in, because one loss of life is too much.
I'm happy you said that, and I'm going to highlight from the program just this one activity, because I believe it's important for persons to be exposed. And so for the week of activities, we are bringing the lineman operation live and direct to the general public, so that you can come out and see on the 27th of this month over on the Frigate Bay lawn. SKELEC will be putting on an expo that allows for the public to come and see the linemen in operation. It's going to be something of a competitive nature, because we will have climbers from SKELEC and we'll have climbers from NEVLEC. There is going to be exhibition climbing, and there's going to be that competitive climbing. They're going to be demonstrating their skills, they're going to demonstrate the gears that they use and the safety wears. So please, I'm encouraging the general public to come out. Let's make a day of it. It's actually branded as a lineman rodeo and expo with a family funded component in it. Frigate Bay lawn on Saturday the 27th of April. Please come on out and see. I know we see them on the post all the time, and we may not understand what they're doing and how they get it done. You're gonna get a first-hand up-close look at our climbers doing their thing, and of course we threw in a little competitive edge there, where it's, bragging rights, NEVLEC versus SKELEC, and we're really looking forward to what it has to operate. Thank you so much, Miss Harris. And
we're going to start to wrap up the program, and I want to, as I allowed both of my guests this morning to start to wrap their minds around their parting words based on the topic this morning, I want to take this opportunity to encourage the members of the public to continue to be the eyes and ears for SKELEC.
Yes.
Not only with lines or with poles or with faulty infrastructure, but even if you recognize one of our employees driving recklessly, even if you recognize anything that has to do with any of our employees or any of our buildings, any of our infrastructure, we want you to continue to be our eyes and ears, because you play a crucial role in allowing us to deliver power to your home safely and reliably. Mr. Langley Stevens, I'll start with you in terms of a wrap-up for this morning's program.
All right. Thank you so much again for having the Safety and Security Department at SKELEC have this conversation with you. We are always pleased to be able to bring that real-time information and the best practices and protocols that the company are embracing and engaged in, not only for our employees but also for our customers, because we are customer-based as well. We look at all of our operations and we identify what are some of the best practices that we can implement to ensure that our workers are operating in the safest possible environment. And for that, I am very pleased to be taking the lead as the Safety and Security Manager and being able to foster these relations with all of our key stakeholders. And so thank you so much for having us, and we do look forward to the engagement as we celebrate the week of activities for World Day of Health and Safety within SKELEC, and we have that public component built in so they can be exposed as well.
Thank you so much, Ms. Langley Stevens, and I have a feeling that you'll be back very, very soon. Mr. Eddy?
Yes, thank you again, Ms. Harris, and as Ms. Langley Stevens would have alluded to, it is a very encouraging process to have stakeholders working together. I think whenever there is the feeling that there is only one, and only one person can say this, and only one institution or establishment has the whole set, I think a lot of persons feel left out, right? And so we are encouraging more establishments, as Ms. Langley Stevens would have said, after they took the initiative to push for a week of activities to commemorate World Day of Safety and Health, it encourages employees to feel that they are a part. Safety is not something that the Labour Department or the Ministry of Employment and Labour wants to keep a secret. It is not something that we want to just keep in a corner, and whenever we say it, that's when it should be discussed. We want more institutions, we want more establishments to understand that safety, as we said, begins with you. And you in this case means each and every one of us, right? So at every avenue, at every angle, we would like persons to think safely, and after we start to think safely, that is when we would, as you said, our vigilance increases. We would see things that we say, hey, can this be done a little bit more safer, right? Can we make our colleagues even more safer? So even when we stump our toe, what can we do to avoid that happening again? And then it goes as we think about in the world of work, because we don't want a person to leave home in 100% condition and then they get back home at 25. That is not good enough, right?
Definitely.
So we are pushing. The agenda would be, as we said, to work closer with our stakeholders as we celebrate this year's World Day for Safety and Health. We are pushing for more collaboration with our stakeholders, and we would get the message out there. Ms. Harris, we would have more dialogues, we would have more conversations addressing this topic in perspective and allowing persons to give their opinions. And hopefully we would then meet our sustainable development goals.
Thank you so much, Mr. Eddy. Thank you so much, Ms. Langley Sabins. I want to thank all of our callers and all of our listeners and viewers for tuning in every first and third Wednesday of the month to Power Talk. I have been your host this morning, Patrice Harris, and remember, SKELEC is the nation's leading utility provider, and we wouldn't have it any other way. Bye-bye.